Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the R&D Podcast. I am your host, Rachel.
I'm Delia.
And in this episode, we're going to be talking about budgets and allowances, specifically if you are an at-home wife whose husband gives her a little something or not.
Or not. Ooh, this one's a tough one. I got to tell you, because I have a lot of people in my inner circle, and not to mention, even the stats that we read or the things that we read online. A lot of the time, I think that the biggest corporates behind you or people filing for divorce or getting angry or all the things that kind of destroy marriages or relationships usually has to do with anything to do with money, really. Because oftentimes, we think that we're putting so much effort into something and then we just need a little extra money for, the nails, the hair, the this, or that, or sometimes, you got to buy extra groceries or what have you. And sometimes you are on such tight budget that you are not able to kind of have that little leeway, or you might have access to the credit card. I've also heard of people that don't care and get their whole entire family in debt. The guy's the last one to find out because he hands over his check and she just goes and blows it. So I think that there's so many layers to this, so Rachel, because I've seen it all. I know someone particularly very, very successful in a very successful marriage, and she also worked, and he would give her like a couple $100 a week, and she was making thousands of dollars. And so it was like that for her for at least 20 years, where she had no accessibility to the bank accounts. And so it got to the point where she was like, enough's enough. And believe it or not, that cost them their marriage. I mean, I'm sure there was more to it, but that was basically like the biggest reason why they filed for divorce.
I know that for me personally, I never had the privilege, right, of having a partner that
was a provider.
Yeah, that was a big provider, like a major provider like that. I always had to find a way to work. And but I will tell you, when I got into media very, very, very young. I was 19 years old when I got my first job at a television station in Los Angeles, and then I got into the magazine industry. But my first magazine job, I started to meet a lot of these men that were like very big, successful business owners. And they would gather around. I'd be the only female in many cases, and they would gather around and they would say, "Hey, like, what's the allowance look like in your home?" And they were comparing the allowances, and I didn't understand at first what they were talking about until one of them said, "Oh, that's like the money they give their wife." And these numbers seemed kind of high to me. Granted, there's a very wealthy man at the time. And so then I was like, "Oh, is this like a month?" And they're like, "Oh no, like this is," she goes to South Coast Plaza, every week. This is weekly. And the one guy who was a pretty successful guy, his number was $800. So he was giving his wife $800 a week, and all the other men made fun of him. They're like, "Wow, are times that tough? Like, did the recession hit home?" So there was this thing where the men loved bragging about the money that they were giving their wives every single week. So just know, yes, that's a group of men that are very wealthy, but we're also hearing stories. One of them just went viral on social media, from women that are working, like you said, and they're handing their check into the pot to their husband, and it's going to all the bills, it's going up to all this, and she's broke.
Yeah, I have to share, a quick story. Obviously, I never give names or anything like that. I had a conversation with someone particularly that was about to get married. So she's engaged, about to get married, and he owns a property, and it's his property, and so he was going to take most of the equity out to give to the brother. That's at least the story that he was telling. She's not going on title or anything like that, but he was wanting to have her assume half of the mortgage on that loan that he was about to take out. And so I remember having a long conversation, because see, the thing is, when you're on a budget like this and you're already in a marriage, I mean, what is a remedy behind that? But when you're about to get married and you're already seeing these red flags, in my opinion, I said, all I got to tell you is prenup. Because, when you're already on a budget, you're already married, okay, how can I contribute more to the pot if I feel like I'm really on a chokehold, meaning that I can't spend more money on my nails or my hair? But when you're seeing this before you're actually entering into a marriage, I mean, you really have to take into consideration, as I had a conversation with her, I said, take into consideration, this is the beginning. And so that means that you're going to have to contribute that much more to the pot. And if he's being irresponsible, in my opinion, with withdrawing, $500,000 out of the house, granted, it's his property, what have you, and he could do whatever he wants, but he shouldn't assume that she's going to she's going to assume half of the loan, because assuming makes A out of you and me,
Yes.
as they say. And so I think that, if you are on a tight budget, you have to figure, can you live with the budget? Do you have to do a little side hustle? Is that going to bother him? Because we've talked in previous episodes where men feel intimidated by the fact that you're trying to build on your own, because then they feel like you're going to grow wings and fly the coop. And so that's the last thing you want to do is, build friction in your household. But on the flip side to that, as I said to you, Rachel, there are women that, get their family in debt. I've known of a lot of women where they're about to throw that foreclosure sign on the freaking property. I've known people like that, and she's got beautiful Chanel bags though. And
the most recent one that went viral was the Kim Solsiak, right?
Oh my gosh,
the Atlanta Housewives, or
she's the biggest
Don't Be
one.
Tardy. And that video, that cop cam or whatever body cam footage was so heartbreaking of her husband yelling, and you could see that he's just at his wits end. And this was a guy that was successful. His parents warned him about her. I think that's the hardest part. But when you look at that, there are women that they have no limits, and it's never enough, or whatever the case is. But I will say to you, like, I saw a video on TikTok the other day, and it broke my heart. I was proud of the lady. It was in Spanish. She was clearly more like a immigrant type worker. She was in her car crying, hair disheveled. She just looked like she just worked like a really long day. And she was saying that she works and works and works and works, and she hands her check over, and she doesn't get anything back, or very little back, just enough to buy the groceries or whatever, the bare minimums.
Yeah.
And what ends up happening is she finds out he's either cheating or flirting, and my Spanish is questionable at times.
Yeah.
And with another woman, and that woman had like her nails done, her hair done, makeup. And so she said, you know what, I am so sick and tired of like giving and all of that I have, working like a dog, putting it all in, for a man that's just gonna go and like flirt around or cheat or whatever he was doing,
and
with
literally
women that look like dolls.
Check.
So she said, so I'm doing this video to say this paycheck, because she had just gotten paid. She said, I'm cashing it, and I'm spending 100% of this check on myself. And she's like, and she was with tears running down. And she goes, and I know he's gonna like kill me over it. And she goes, and I'm gonna get my hair done, and I'm gonna get my makeup done, I'm gonna get my nails done. She goes, so if you guys are watching this, if there's anybody in my area that does hair, that does this and that, because she had never even
got anything done.
So she didn't even know who to go to for it. And it broke my heart when I saw it. I was proud of her, but I thought, man, she's gonna be held to pay, obviously.
I know, for sure.
But yeah.
That's a tough one. I because we're on this tickety talk subject, I saw another story, and I think this story was really sad. So there was a lady that had a house near the beach, and it was a smaller place, and she's about to get married. So the fiance moved in, and so the fiance's like, I think it's time for us to buy a bigger property, just because your house is really small. It was like a 2-bedroom. So she agreed, but obviously I guess something was wrong with her credit. She couldn't qualify. Long story longer, she sells the house. They go ahead and buy the next property. She doesn't go on title, but they take all the proceeds from the house that they sold, that was her house, and they put it into the new house. Well, all of a sudden, lo and behold, he's no longer in love with her, and he's like, bye, Felicia. And so guess what happens? Yeah. He keeps the house, and legally she has no recourses to go after him. And so now she has to start back up from scratch. And if you've seen what the market's looking like right now, then you'll know it's probably going to be very hard for her to actually build herself up to build that equity or build that kind of money to buy and put a down payment on a property. So I think that, this goes hand in hand with being on any type of monetary budget, financial budgets. I think you're a conversation away, honestly, from anything, really. But if you feel like you're being taken advantage, you need to really like tug on that person, because I remember there was a moment there where I used to do sales, and I never, ever, ever got paid commission. And that's a tough part of that.
If you're watching this and going, oh, I would never let that happen, or how can these women allow this to happen? It looks as simple as, and we were talking about this off camera a little bit, simple as, no, baby, you don't have to do that. Here, I'll do this. That's it. That's the door that it opens. Okay. Yeah. So there's this thing in business that says, there was a 3-month study, and you go, okay, if you pay someone that makes, let's just say minimum wage, or maybe they make $100,000 a year. Okay. And you say, I'm going to pay you $1 million this year. Let's just say for a month, I'm going to pay you $1 million this month. Okay. and then they go, oh my God. The first time they're like so grateful, shocked. They're so
Can't
flattered.
believe
They're
it.
like, wow, they see you with like heart, shaped eyes. Like, this person's so amazing for doing
They
this.
love
The
me.
second month, they're like, all right, like, this is pretty cool. Like, wow, okay, I didn't expect this second time. And by the third time, they believe that they deserve it.
Right.
And so you have to understand money
Right.
is a very powerful thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that when you keep opening those doors and say, it's okay, I'll do this. It's okay, here, I got it covered. It's okay, don't worry, I'll do. You are opening the door to eventually, okay, having someone that has no problem saying, hey, you got this time. Hey, if I do this, can you pay that half? You got to be mindful. And I'm not sitting here saying don't be generous. I'm not saying don't be considerate. Like,
Right,
I'm not
of
doing
course.
any of that, But you got to just learn that these things start from very small, well-intended places.
Right.
And then they erode down the line, and greed will rear its head at
I
some
know.
point.
I mean, I think that that with what, kind of, tapping into the story that you're telling right now, I think that what I've seen oftentimes too is, the woman, has a job but doesn't pay her as much. She's got the kids. Now the husband's like, honey, don't worry, just stay home and I got you and the kids. It's okay. So now here she is putting her entire career on hold. And this could be, I've seen it, believe it or not, with even women that are attorneys.
Yes.
That, actually put their whole entire career on hold. And here is this man saying, don't worry, I'm going to save us. And all of a sudden you're on this crazy budget, and then you don't really know your worth, by the way. And that's the unfortunate part about this, is that you don't understand your worth anymore because you're not out there anymore hustling and bustling. And so I think, again, I can't stress this enough. And I think in anything that you do, whether that's in business or in relationships, you're a conversation away from anything. And if it's something that doesn't align with you, then you have to understand, like, how can I build myself up in a way that I'm not going to threaten my marriage, but he understands that I want to contribute because I need these extra things, whether that's, getting your nails done, your hair done, or
even
example, buying a car.
Like, having someone come clean your house,
right.
Having someone that maybe, to pay someone once a week that can cover the kids for you while you do go meet your girlfriends for lunch, or you go to whatever it is that you're doing for yourself. I think that even, I can say this for myself. I've always been a bit of a workhorse, and I've always had this little sense that, like, no one's coming, even when I was in a marriage, right? And I never have, I guess you could say, never felt safe, right? To like, put my guard down. And in that, though, I always felt like I needed to earn my value still somehow. So
earn your keeps, as they say.
I cleaned the house, I cooked all the meals, I looked a certain way, like, did all these things, and it's like hindsight's 20/20, and I go, what the heck was I doing? Like, I could have literally paid someone. That place wasn't that big anyways. I could have paid someone to come in, whip it around with her little team, and benefit her life. By the way, you're blessing this woman or person who's coming in and making their living, right? And be done with it. And the movie The Help is so funny because there is a character in there. I'm a movie buff, if you can tell, but like, there's a woman in there that she married a wealthy man, and he thought she can cook and clean and license, and she doesn't know how to do any of it.
Oh, snap.
So she was hiring a lady in town, but it had to be very discreet. And she's like, you need to come and make the pies and do all the things. But you got to leave by like 2 p.m. because he gets home at 3. And so listen, I'm not saying lie, okay? But like, you can start thinking in those terms of like, instead of thinking, oh, I don't need that much money, it's okay if he doesn't give me an allowance. No, start thinking bigger for yourself, and start thinking in terms of like, how much more peace will you have in your life if somebody came in and helped you clean those tubs? How much more peace would you have in your life if you went somewhere for someone to dye your hair instead of doing it yourself?
Right.
Like, or your nails, or whatever the situation is. Just think in those terms, and then write it down and go, okay, what does it cost for me to have my ideal peaceful situation, where then, by the way, you get to show up for him in a greater way. So don't look at it like taking. It's an investment, and also it's a benefit for him.
Yeah, and you're giving.
And your children.
And you're also probably going to be a little bit more at ease and more at peace. And I think that's so important. I think there's nothing worse than living in hostile environments. And if you feel that there's not enough time, because I think that, especially when you have children, they're hungry. Mom, I'm hungry. It's like, breakfast, and they want a snack, then they want lunch, and they want lunch after snack, and then dinner, and then they want, a snack after dinner.
Or go play. Then
and
they
then
get
it's
hurt.
like, you know what I mean? And it's constant. So in other words, you're in the kitchen a lot, and so it gets a little overwhelming. So if you think that, you could afford to get someone to kind of help you tidy up, once a week, once every 2 weeks, and maybe look into that, know. But yeah, I think that you're a conversation away from like really fixing anything. And if you're on a tight budget, well, maybe figure how you can contribute to the pot without rattling cages.
Yes.
Or, letting them know straight up, like, hey, I contribute, I hustle, I work, and this isn't cutting it. So you gotta, something's gotta give. You either gotta get another job, and I need to get a little bit more money. But you have to have those conversations, which sometimes I think they're a little bit difficult to have, because I think that everyone kind of gets a little bit like
everybody feels like
everybody
they don't
starts to get like cat when they see water. They just like they want to get at you.
Don't be afraid of ruffling feathers. Don't be afraid of the tough conversations, because you'll move forward faster and you'll get further by going ahead and addressing it. I love what some of the women that I've known that were housewives, and the kids got to, like, let's just say junior high or whatever, and then all of a sudden they went and got a job at the school. Because that way they're on the same schedule as the kids, and they could do all the sports and stuff. There's a lot of ways that you could work around it. A lot of
benefits,
working for your city, so that way you just make sure that when the kids are off, then you're also off, right? Mm-hmm. Your husband has vacation time, you'll be able to get vacation time. So you don't always have to like hustle it, and you don't always have to like outwork him or break yourself over it. Just kind of decide, make a list of what those niceties are that can bring you a lot of peace, which would then in turn benefit everybody around you. Find out what that costs. Is it an extra $1,000? Is it an extra $500? Like, is it $5,000? Of course, we all we'd love an extra $20,000, all this, but get realistic at first with what it costs to get your hair done, nails done, like have the house cleaner, whatever that might be.
It's about $2,000 a month. Right?
If there's like a little play date center or whatever that may. Pilates is more expensive than the normal gym, if that's what you want to do. Like, make a list of these things, tanning, whatever it might be, and then go, all right, I need an extra $1,000 just to break even on this.
Yep.
And then add a little sugar on top and go, okay, can he afford to do that every week and give me that extra? Or do I go get a little part-time job helping someone out, the senior center or something like that, just to make that little extra?
Yeah. And that's pretty good. I like it. No, I like it.
But are there men that are like, complaining about the fact that you're using the credit card, complaining that you're at Target again, complaining about your Starbucks bill? Yeah, but you know what? Also, wives are expensive.
Okay.
And men need to choose the one that they can afford. And so just decide: are you the wife on clearance? Are you the blue light special, as they used to say back in the 80s and 90s, or are you?
I think that depends on how long you've been married. Because I think that if you're in 10 years deep or 15 years deep, and then you've never required $1,000 a month to upkeep yourself, he's gonna be like, where is this $1,000 coming from? Like, you've always done good with like $50.
But it's like, show the list. Make that list.
I know. And as we get older, I for me anyway, I would say, there are things that you want to get done a little bit more than not. And so, there's Botox, there's fillers, there's this. I know there's a lot of women that don't do that, so don't come at me. Yeah. But I'm just saying, like, at the end of the day, if you're talking to someone,
that benefits him as well. Because he gets to be like, wow, look at my beautiful wife.
So true, but I think at the end of the day, it really boils down to how long you've been with this person. Yeah. And so, if you've been with him since you were in your early 20s, probably the maintenance wasn't there, or maybe it was, and he knows that. And so, but I do think that with what you're saying, if they're already in this marriage and, she's requesting or requiring a little bit more money, then it's a matter of figuring out, do I get a little part-time job? Do I go and, get a job at the school? What do I have to do in order for me to get those funds? But I think it's just your conversation away from anything, really.
I assure you that if it's been 10 years, his pay has increased over the course of those 10 years. And if you were working at a company, your pay would increase over the course of those 10 years. So inflation's a mother, and ask for those percentage increases if you have to.
15%.
I think that the most interesting thing, if you can learn to treat your marriage a little bit like a business, it's a little business.
Well,
not too business,
I gotta know.
A little bit.
No. But at the end of the day, it really is. And even prenups are very much a business, like a business dealing. Like, what are you doing?
Because men work in business every day, so it is part of their narrative, and they understand that. So if you can put your list together and present it and just say, here's the things that I think would make me feel really amazing and they benefit you because I'll look hotter, whatever it might be, and stuff like that. And then he could say, hey, you know what, $1,200 I can't do, but I can do $6.
Yeah.
And then you just get started, and then he'll like how happy you are with it. be super grateful, and you never know if you'll get more. But I know for us to be able to say that is tough because we're just like, just go make your own money.
I mean, so that's all we got.
The end. All right. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
See you next time.
See you next time.